I'm actually I'm a filmmaker, but I'm also a master trainer for Premiere Pro. I travel around the world quite a lot, visiting TV stations and film companies, teaching them how to use this software. And as I'm sure everyone here is aware, there's a big migration happening for a lot of editors, and a lot of people are switching to Premiere Pro. This is Premiere Pro CS6. It's fantastic. I've got about 30 minutes to show you why. I'm going to talk a little bit about the core new features in Premiere Pro CS6, and I'm also going to talk a little bit about the interoperability with other applications in the suite. One of the major reasons why people look so seriously at Premiere Pro is because it's embedded as a component inside Creative Suite. So I'm just going to give you two examples, maybe three, but probably just two examples of how beautifully elegant that technology is and how easy it is to compare to stuff you might be used to. And we'll have a couple of minutes at the end to do a little bit of Q&A. Just before I start, how many of you are already using Avid or a media composer in some form? And how many of you are too tired even to lift your hand after the chili? How many are FCP? Okay, how about anything else? Who's using another system? Right, what are you using? Okay, so you're using Premiere Pro, fine. I should have asked that. Actually, how many of you are using Premiere Pro, an earlier version of Premiere Pro? Woo! Okay. So this is Premiere Pro CS6, and I'm going to switch, first of all, let me reset the workspace here so you can see how it comes out of the box. And there's a couple of things you'll notice right away. If you're using an earlier version of Premiere Pro, you might spot there's no numbers here anymore along the bottom of the monitors. You can turn them back on, but they're off by default, the timecode indicators. And in fact, the buttons, this is really a really cool feature that if you like to edit by keyboard, then you can just turn off the transport controls completely in your interface so that you really have a minimalist interface. And you know, if you're cutting 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, do you really need a button on screen when you're using JKL? Probably not. So we've got the focus on the media for the source and the program monitor. And down here, I've got my project panel where I've got my media assets. Now, if you're used to cutting with Media Composer or with Final Cut Pro, then you're probably used to transcoding because you're going to get the best performance and frankly, the best stability, the best robustness from the system if you're using ProRes for FCP or DNX HD for Avid Media Composer. And I'm an Avid ACI as well, and Avid Media Composer is a great cutter, and it likes you to have this narrow workflow. Go through DNX HD and all will be well. And part of that is because there's a media database in it and it manages your media. Premiere Pro has always had a format agnostic approach to media. And up until version 4, CS4, that meant that you could mix and match things on the timeline, but it did mean you were rendering quite a lot when things didn't match. With Premiere Pro CS5 onwards, the playback engine was rewritten. And in particular, there were improvements for long GOP media. So anybody who's shooting DSLR? Anybody shooting DSLR here, right? So if you're working with FCP, you're going to transcode to ProRes because it's not great performance if you're cutting H.264. But I'll show you how the performance compares in Premiere Pro. So first of all, if you see here, we've got a new feature in CS6, which is hover scrub. I'm just going to make these thumbnails a bit bigger so you can see. Actually, in the bin, I can just waft my mouse over the clip. And as I do so, I'm getting the contents of the clip playing back. It's showing me the content. So it's a very quick way of displaying my media. I can toggle full screen with this panel, and I can make these really very big, so the thumbnails aren't thumbnail sized anymore. And here you can see, as I'm playing through, I can mark this, and if I select the clip, I'm just clicking once on it, you get this little miniature timeline, and you can see I've marked it already. So if you want to, you can skim through all your media in the bin using the hover scrub feature. You can use JKL to play back if you want as well. And then just drag everything into your timeline, and there's your assembly edit. Now, as an editor, I traditionally have a way of opening media, and what I would do is just open up a shot and just drag through it at a steady rate right the way from beginning to end. And that gives me a sense of the content, and then I'd mark it as I go. But using hover scrub, I found that it's totally unnecessary. Often you don't need the source panel at all. Now, as an editing teacher, I'm always saying don't bother with accurate in and out marks because you can always make the accurate marks on the timeline. And this is getting even easier now, partly because of this, but partly because of some new trimming functions. And I'll show you what I mean. One of the criticisms that Premiere Pro had in earlier releases was in the trimming. The trimming was okay, but you're comparing it with an application, for example, like Media Composer that has very, very mature trimming functionality. And this is something in Premiere Pro that in CS6 has become a feature. It's become a really fantastic part of the application. So let me just show you a couple of examples. If I go to, I've got a sequence here which has some stuff in it that I can trim. And you see I've got a shot that's absolutely tiny. Let me scale that up. It's a little bit small. So here, if I wanted to trim back, you can see I've got a shot on the top line here. Ooh, don't step away from the corner. The corner is the safe place. So you can see on the second track there, I've got a shot that needs trimming. And there's a bunch of ways I can do that. I can trim head and tail, I can extend, and I can mark sections. But now we've got dynamic trim. So here I can select the end of a clip and I can drag and I can adjust the duration as you would expect in a nonlinear editor. If I double click on a trim handle, I'm going to get this new trim monitor which does most of the trimming that you will want to do in your editing system. You can use the full dedicated trim panel. I'll show you that for just a second. Here we go. So here's your dedicated trim monitor, and this gives you all of the different trim modes. You've got slip, slide, and dual direction, and you can do very complex trims now in Premiere Pro. You can do those kinds of insane, illegal trims where things are going in 5 different directions if you want to. But this trim panel gives you some very interesting functionality. For a start, I can use it to trim, just as you would expect. That's fine. But I can also now combine trimming with my J, K, and L keys. So J, K, and L are used for playback. J plays backwards, L plays forwards, K pauses. Every editing system does that. But if I now press the L key and press K to pause, I've now trimmed the shot. And this feature, this combination of JKL, playback, and trimming, really allows you to go from maybe an assembly edit right down to a second or third wave rough cut. Because you only know when the timing's right by playing the video back. And when it's playing, you know when the moment's right. But traditionally, you'd have to adjust and replay and adjust and replay and loop play and loop play. Now you can do it in a single pass. It's one of those features where if you're cutting every day, you'll be excited. And if you're not, you'll be thinking, so what? Tell your editors and they're going to be impressed. So let me mention a little bit as well about format support while I remember, because a lot of people are coming to Premiere Pro new. If I just scroll down here, I imported before everybody came in here we go, let's put this in here. This is DSLR media straight off of a Canon 5D. So you can see, if I put this at full resolution, H.264 media, super hard to play back, and Premiere Pro has a wonderful playback engine for that long GOP, long group of picture media. So if you're shooting H.264, if you're shooting AVC HD, absolutely fantastic. If I play this back, I'll go full screen. You can see it plays absolutely fine. Not so impressive, but what's more impressive is if I combine this with some effects. Maybe I'll put some color correction on. I'll go for the 3-way color correctors, newly developed in CS6. Allows you to do things like secondary color correction. You can do levels adjustments with it. I'll just make this really obvious so you can see I've done it. Oops. And right now, I'm playing back without CUDA support, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. But you can see here, I'm doing this in software only. And the playback's okay. I mean, I'm going dual monitor here, but it's all right. That's with a color correction effect, and it's native. I haven't done any transcoding or rewrapping or any form of conversion. And you can combine any number of formats on the timeline, and Premiere Pro's just going to make it work. And I've shown this feature, I'm going to show you in a moment, combining this with red media. I've shown this to long-term Final Cut Pro editors, and people have accused me of faking it and saying, no, surely you've pre-cached that somehow. No, I haven't. Let me come back out, and I'm going to turn on the CUDA support. So here, oh, this mouse is a bit frisky. So this is software only. Now I'm going to turn on CUDA. Now, CUDA is a kind of the next iteration of OpenGL. So Adobe and NVIDIA developed this technology together, and in a nutshell, it's a technology that allows Premiere Pro to hand work to the graphics card rather than to the CPU. And that's important because graphics cards are amazing at doing things with visuals. They're not so great at compiling software applications and those kinds of core computational tasks. But if you've got stuff to do with visuals, they're made for the task. And if you have the right graphics card, there's a list on the Adobe website, Premiere Pro can pipeline work over to the graphics card. And I've seen, for example, I mean, this is a pretty good spec, but it's a laptop. But I've seen if you get something like the HP Z800s, for example, a good spec machine, I've seen 9 layers of HD playing back in real time, combined with 30 real-time visual effects. So we're moving into a new paradigm for video editing, where as an editor, you can stop thinking about rendering and hardware and just get on with cutting your movie. So here's an example. This is H.264, full screen with an effect. In fact, while I'm here, notice I can toggle and I can go into my effect and make changes to it, and the playback just continues. It doesn't stop the playback now. This is a new feature in CS6. Maybe I'll go in and I'll put a Gaussian blur on as well. That's really hard to play back. Let's put that on. Okay, so now it's really hard to look at. Again, full quality, it just plays. In fact, while I'm there, why don't I show you this combined with something a bit more challenging to play back. Now, in this bin, I've got a 5K Red Epic piece of media. Is anybody shooting with Red or with the Epic? Has anyone heard about that camera? Yeah, so it shoots 5K at 120 frames a second with 17 stops of latitude. It's absolutely wonderful. I can't wait to try it out. This is 5K native. Now, if you look, I think I've got the zoom working here. Let me try, see if I can get this to work. Let me start up my zooming software so you can see. I think, there we go. So you see, at the bottom of my monitor, I've got this, where it says full at the moment. There we go, there. I can specify a playback quality and I can change it whenever I like. And there's a separate quality for pausing. So if you are working with slower hard drives or a less powerful CPU or really, really big media like this Red Epic media, then you can just change the playback resolution whenever you want. It's not going to change the output. Premiere Pro actually conforms at the point of playback. So in this case, I've got 5K media staying 5K on my timeline. And if I put that into a 1080 timeline, which I can do, it still stays 5K, but scaled. And now I can pan and scan inside the 5K media, and I'm not going to lose resolution. And this opens up new paradigms for production, because it means you can shoot wide if you want to, and then just crop in and get the final framing in post. It's quite an interesting prospect, especially with the high latitude. I'm going to drop this to quarter res, and this should play back absolutely fine. Now this is slow motion media, so it's going to be slow, but you can see the playback is fine, the playback is smooth. Now Red, this is R3D files native straight off of an Epic, and Red uses a kind of dynamic metadata. So if I get into the properties for this clip and go into the source settings here, this is all of the interpretation that happens in camera when the photons hit the chip, and that photon count gets converted into some kind of meaningful data for media representation. And I can change all of this, and it's going to have no impact on playback performance at all, because you have to do one level of interpretation. So here, if I maybe, I'll make this really obvious because it's a red shot. I'm going to make this red looking. There we go. And you'll see now I can play this back exactly the same, no impact on real-time performance. So this is preamp color correction. You can do this retrospectively, and it's just going to play in the timeline. And remember, this is a laptop. It's a pretty beefy laptop, but it is just a laptop. If you get a really spec'd up machine with really fast hard drives, you're going to see even better performance. Just to give you an idea of how impressive this is, because I know when you're looking on a screen, it's just another image. I'll put a piece of H.264 media on top. So here's the H.264 media from a Canon 5D. That's full 1920 by 1080 HD media on the timeline that we're working on. And that's the wrong one. And here I can play this back exactly the same. It's an early feature, but a lot of the panels have these quick search filtering boxes. So if I just start typing in color, I get all of the effects that have the word color in. You have the same feature in the project panel when you're looking for your clips. And you'll notice, before I put the effect on, I've got these three little tags here. One, if your eyesight's really good at the back, you'll be able to see this. One is telling me if the effect is CUDA enabled. The next one is telling me if it's 32-bit enabled. You can switch your timeline to a mode where all of the effects that are this kind of effect will render in 32-bit floating point color. So never mind 10-bit. Premiere Pro is automatically going to decompress everything into 444 fully uncompressed 32-bit anyway. But when it's computing the effects, by default, it'll be 8-bit, which is standard for nonlinear editors. But if you use 32-bit effects and you turn the toggle on, it gives you a real-time performance hit, but it's okay. You still get some good real-time performance. Then you're actually computing at 32-bit floating point. So it's super high-quality effects. You'll also notice there's a YUV toggle, and a lot of the effects in Premiere Pro can work natively in YUV. So if you're shooting YUV, you can cut in YUV, you can output in YUV. And of course, what you do in terms of screens and distribution is a nightmare that nobody has a solution to, because nowadays you've got to produce for everything from an iPhone to a cinema screen, and everything's got a different color gamut. You just have to work that out. But we also have speed grade in the suite now, which I'll try and get the time to show you very briefly, which is a really high-end, fine finishing grading application that you can use to output to multiple mediums. Okay, so I'm going to put some color correction on this as well. That's a fast color corrector, so it's got one big wheel. Let's make it green. And again, you can see this is just going to play back, and it's fine. So as an editor, the key thing is not to have to wait, not to have to stop and think about your technology. When you're editing and when you're creating, you want to be in a kind of a state of no mind, where the technology just works. And there's a couple of other things I want to show you now that are following that meme. So in Premiere Pro CS5 and 5.5, in fact, in After Effects, we had the warp stabilizer. Does anybody see the warp stabilizer? There was a feature in After Effects. That effect is now incorporated into Premiere Pro. So if I go, let's have a look here. I've got a shot which I can use the warp stabilizer on. So here, this is now inside Premiere Pro CS6. And all you have to do with the warp stabilizer, if you've got slightly shaky footage, all you have to do is put the effect on. And Premiere Pro is now analyzing this clip. I pull down a bit. There we go. You can see the frame count there. It's working through the media. And this is something it's doing in the background, so I can get on with editing other things if I want to. I can start looking at other shots. I can be working on other sequences. When it's finished, Premiere Pro will have analyzed the content, not just in the traditional way of scaling the shot and moving around inside it, but it actually segments the image and compensates for movement in all directions for the camera. So it gives you really, really good quality stabilization without you having to do anything. How's that getting on? That's 97, 98%. Okay. Stabilizing. And this again is a real-time effect. So you can see with the effect and without. In fact, one of these has been pre-analyzed. So if I show you the, here we go. Oh, it's already on, look. Let me show you it without, first of all. That's the original. And here it is with warp stabilization applied. So you can see it just smooths out the movement, particularly at the end there, where we had that really, really visible shake. Now there's limits to how much this can do. It also has some intelligent content-aware image creation for the edges. So if you've got a scene where it's maybe the sea or some clouds or something like that, you can procedurally generate texture around the edge of the image to compensate for some of the zooming. And the result is that you get to pull out wider. You don't have to zoom in quite as much into the image. Also, in CS5.5, we had a rolling shutter repair, which was part of the warp stabilizer in After Effects. This is now a standalone effect. and in fact, look, it's already been applied. But this is kind of subtle, but you know, if you're shooting DSLR, the image is recorded in lines down the sensor. And this means that the lower parts of the image are recorded after the upper parts. Same problem as a film camera with a rolling shutter cutting across the film plane. So here, if I put rolling shutter repair on, it's pretty subtle, but can you see it tilting? Can you see that? If I zoom in a little bit, maybe if I go full screen, so you can see that's one way, that's without, that's with. You see how it's straightening the image? It's one of those things that just sharpens up and cleans up your image. And again, all you have to do is put the effect on and it works. So, how am I doing for time? Right, 9 minutes. Okay, Wall stabilizer formats, media support. So lots and lots of different media formats supported. And you can just put whatever you want on the timeline and it's going to play. You can mix and match frame rates, field orders, pixel aspect ratios, progressive, interlaced, whatever you've got. Put them on the timeline. It's just going to work. In fact, if you want to work with Final Cut Pro as well as Premiere Pro, then you can acquire your media in FCP, you can capture into FCP, do a rough cut, export an XML, import that XML into Premiere Pro, and you can work natively with your original ProRes media. Perfectly good playback performance. It's a good codec. If that's what you want to use, no problem. If you're cutting in Media Composer, export an AAF, link to your original media, import that into Premiere Pro, and you can work with your original media files the same way. And you can round trip back again. So if you're working in a post-production facility where you've got multiple editors that prefer different systems, you're fine. The only cutoff point comes when you're using proprietary effects. If you start using something like color correction inside Final Cut Pro, then you're not going to be able to read that in another editing system because it's a proprietary special effect. So you need to make a decision once you get to the effects stage. Right, so After Effects Audition, and I want to tell you about audio a little bit as well. Premiere Pro's got fantastic, oh, and multi-camera. Let me quickly show you multi-camera, because this is something that was developed for this release as well. Somewhere in here, here we go. So with Premiere Pro CS6, you had a limit of 4 camera angles. Playback performance was okay. In Premiere Pro CS6, we can now just select our clips in the bin, say make that into multi-camera please. In this case, I don't have external sync source timecode, but if I did, Premiere Pro would honor it and it would make my synchronized edit. Click OK. Put the results into my sequence, and you'll notice we've got this new feature in Premiere Pro CS6. The first time you put a clip into a sequence, if the settings don't match, then Premiere Pro will offer to update the sequence to match your media. In fact, there's a lovely shortcut. You can just drag a clip onto the new item button in the bin, and it's going to automatically make a sequence that matches. So if you're in a hurry, I know for news, people like to use this a lot because they get some kind of media from somewhere, and they can just put it on the timeline and it's going to work. So if I now go to my multi-camera monitor, let me turn the sound off because it's kind of awful. If I play this back now, you can see I can choose my camera angles. I can use the numbers at the top of my keyboard as well if I like. And you see where the red highlight is, I'm choosing the angle. And you can have as many angles as you like. And if I zoom in a bit on the timeline, there's a new navigator for the timeline. If I zoom in here, you can see I've made my multi-camera cuts. And by the way, that was 7 layers of H.264 1920 by 1080 media playing back live, native as H.264 inside the multi-camera monitor. So the playback performance is amazing, and again, it just works. Right, okay, couple more things, and then we'll do some Q&A. Fight the chili, breathe deeply, stretch, stay with me, look at the light. So, okay, this is really good. So, I've got After Effects CS6 on here as well. There are some major new developments for After Effects in this release. And remember, we're just putting anything we want in the timeline in Premiere Pro. Let me show you a new feature in After Effects, a couple of new features in After Effects. First of all, here's a shot. Let's say that I decide that I want to put some text. I want to put some 3D text over this image. And if I play it back, if I wanted to, let's say I wanted to appear over those spouts on top of the bonnet. If I wanted to do that in Premiere Pro, I could do a kind of a fake 3D thing, and I could scale and animate and keyframe it. But it's going to be a lot easier using tracking in After Effects. So here's the interaction with After Effects. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to choose Replace with After Effects Composition. And this is going to fire up After Effects. It's going to make a composition. It's going to take the media asset, and it's going to swap that media asset for a dynamically linked After Effects comp. So now I'm working on the comp, and everything I do here is going to update live inside of Premiere Pro. So here, this is absolutely brilliant. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to choose Track Camera. This is a new feature in After Effects CS6. And this is going to examine the image and identify within it 3D locations and also 3D planes. And just like the warp stabilizer, this is something that happens very, very simply. There's almost no user interaction. You just put the effect on, it does the analysis, and when it's finished, you're ready to use those 3D points to assign whatever you want. In this case, I'm going to use text. So while that's analyzing, I'm just going to toggle back to Premiere Pro because I want to import a clip to show you, and I know we're short on time. And I've shown this feature several times, and I just want to show it in this demo because it kind of makes the point of interoperability between the applications. How's that doing? Okay, so that analysis is complete. And now, if I turn on showing the point, you can see these marks all over the image. In fact, I think this is more visual. If I make these 2D, can you see how it's got a kind of a 3D location to those images? So, to those little crosshairs. So what I'm going to do is, let me shrink those back down again a little bit. If I hover the mouse, let me shrink this right down. If I hover the mouse inside this picture, you can see I'm getting planes that are created by multiple points in three-dimensional space. And I'm going to pick one of these. Let's just pick that one. I'm going to right-click and choose Create Text and Camera. And this is going to add some text that's automatically anchored to that 3D space. Now, I'll go quick with this because I know I haven't got too much time. Let's just move that over a little. And this is called Bone Shaker. So let's rewrite that. Oh, yeah. Bone Shaker. Okay, maybe let's shrink that down a little. And, oh, yeah. And then, it's come out huge, hasn't it? Okay. I'm going to make that a bit smaller. I'm doing this very, very roughly because I know we've got very little time. And I'm just going to rotate this a little to fix the 3D not being exactly the same as the image. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, that's the video. Don't do that. Okay, that will do. And I'll just move this up a little. Fine. Well, let's put it there. So the result is, maybe if I put a new light in, let's put a pin light in, that'll do. So it just gives it a bit of texture. Now, if I RAM preview this, you can see After Effects has positioned this in 3D space, and I didn't have to do anything. I just said, find the 3D points in the shot, connect it together, anchor that text to it, make it happen. And After Effects has placed that content in 3D space for me automatically. Now there's a new feature in After Effects CS6 where I can work on other compositions, I can preview other stuff. When I go back to my original composition, I keep my render. So if anybody's using After Effects at the moment up to CS5.5, you're always RAM previewing, and when you finish previewing and go into another composition, you lose the original preview. After Effects CS6 has a new feature called Global Performance Cache, which caches all of your RAM previews as a frame store in a file location on your hard drive. You want a nice fast drive, and it just keeps it indefinitely. So you can go into any number of compositions and work on them and come back to them. And as long as the image hasn't changed, layer by layer, you can get access to that previously rendered preview. It's a massive feature for After Effects users. And what's nice is that Premiere Pro can benefit from it. So I can go back into Premiere Pro, I can find my composition, and I can play it. And I get that real-time performance right inside of Premiere Pro. So I can just use After Effects as my effects engine for Premiere Pro, and I'm still benefiting from any rendering that I do. The very last example of this, because I know I need to wind up and see if anybody has any questions. If I put the audio on here, just have a listen to this. Some of you may have seen this demo before, but it's a beautiful illustration of why using the suite together is so good. And you don't need to be an expert on all the applications. You just need to know a few workflows to get the benefit of it. If I play this,
is an energy drink company committed to health and fitness.
So you can all hear the telephone ringing in the background, right? It's a classic problem, and the director says, without this shot, my film is meaningless. I'm just going to walk off the project, and you're going to have to put, I can never remember the name of the director. What's the name that people put on when? Alan Smithy. This is going to be an Alan Smithy production unless you keep that shot. So as an editor, you end up using notch filters, parametric EQ, you play with it, and eventually you find the frequency and it's acceptable. Because I'm working in Production Premium here, I can choose to edit the clip in Adobe Audition. When I do that, Audition fires up, and here's the clip. Now traditionally, you'll know waveforms. A waveform has time moving left to right, and it has amplitude top to bottom. It's how far the speaker moves when it beats the air. And you can see I've got stereo, so there's two of them. And all it's showing me is amplitude. In Audition, I also have a spectral display. Now in the spectral display, it's two channels still. Time moves left to right. But the vertical axis of this display is actually frequency. So amplitude is displayed by brightness. And once you know those facts, you can easily see where the telephone ring tone is. It's kind of fuzzy on this display. It's kind of sharper on my screen, but you can see it's right here. There's the telephone.
Committed to health and fitness.
So now that I know that, I can get my Photoshop style marquee tool, just select those frequencies, hit delete.
Energy drink company committed to health and fitness.
That'll do. Save that, toggle it back, have a listen.
Was an energy drink company committed to health and fitness.
Have an extra tea break. How cool is that? So now, if this is one of those things where it's like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, isn't it? Like if you know how to do it, it's quick and easy. But that really is it. You just need to know that you're seeing frequency and amplitude and use the Photoshop style selection tools. I have another example here I'll just show you very briefly because I'm a big fan of Audition. Just to, no, not on there, just to show you what Audition can do for you because it's really sweet. Here's a piece of audio with a cough in it. Can you hear the cough? Yeah? So I'm going to get the healing brush tool. So I've got a brush for selections, but I've got a healing brush tool. I'm going to draw over the cough. Like, I feel a bit like Blue Peter. There's another one. Let's draw over that. Now, get your double-sided sticky tape and your washing up liquid bottle. Glue them together. Fixed. So people are loving Audition for this reason. You don't need to be an expert. In my experience, video editors often wing it, and sound editors are like scientists. There's like this difference in the mindset of people who like audio and visuals. I'm exaggerating. But you don't need to be a scientist to use Audition to fix your clips in this way using Premiere Pro. Okay, so one very last thing on the subject of audio, because it is relevant, and then I'll just switch over to a little bit of Q&A. There's a new feature in Premiere Pro CS6 where if you want to, you can now output to up to 16 channels of audio. And one of the problems people have got, particularly with broadcast formats like XD-Cam and P2, HD-Cam, you end up with all of these channels of audio. And it can be quite difficult to manage where they go for output. So in CS6 now, we can have up to 16 channels of output, and we can change whenever we want which of those channels your audio tracks will go to. You can have audio tracks that will take up to 16 channels as well. and you can patch, if you like, any direction you want. You can even assign the audio channels for your original audio as well. So you could have 8-channel source where channel 1 in your source clip is going to channel 5 on the timeline, which is going to channel 8 on output, if for some terrifying reason that's the workflow that you have for your post-production sound. And this is all just standard now in Premiere Pro CS6.